there's this romanticised notion that culture is frozen in time. The best thing I can do is hold space as a black woman, hold on to everything I've been taught, the cultural tools I've been given by the people before me, hold them, play my role, and then pass the tools on,
Welcome everybody to the Impact Policy Podcast. My name's Sam Johnson. I'm the Managing Director here at Impact Policy, and today, so glad to have been joined by Rowena Welsh Jarrett. We spent the last better part of an hour taking a deep dive into cultural heritage, particularly from Aboriginal perspective. We dive deep into what cultural heritage looks like across New South Wales, but particularly on this country here in Sydney City. And it's a conversation that's full of a lifetime of knowledge, insight, and reflections in terms of how to approach and navigate this sort of stuff. We talk about, Aboriginal affairs more broadly in the state here too. And I think it's an episode particularly for people that are working in cultural heritage, planning an environment, native title or land rights, or if you're interested in Aboriginal affairs more generally. This is something that's going to be an episode that, you probably get a lot of insight from and value. So I just want to take a moment to thank Rowie and really hope that you all enjoy the episode. And if you have followed us for some time now and you enjoy what we're doing, if you can please take a moment to like and subscribe, that just really helps us make sure that we get this content to as many people as possible and have as much of an impact as we can. So thank you so much. Please enjoy the episode. Maybe for people that are listening, we could kick it off with you just introducing yourself, telling everyone who you are, where you're from, what you do, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm Rowena Welsh Jarrett. I'm a very, very proud Dharawal and Gumbaynggirr Woman. That's on my mum's lineage. And then dad's was a super proud Gomeroi Murawari man. And he's sort of matriarchal lineage, obviously Dungari, bit of Dungari and Anawan. But basically very proud community members of our Redfern and La Perouse community. And I've spent majority of my life born and bred here in Sydney and working in Aboriginal cultural heritage.
Yeah.
With my people, on the country, for my country.
Yeah, beautiful. And so you grew up here most of your life?
Yeah.
Sydney City, Redfern?
Yeah. So mum's from here.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're really proud Dharawal people, and it's our matrilineal lineage that's Dharawal. So mum's mum. So super, super strong in that identity. And was only having this conversation with my sister the other day about, how important it was for us to be born here in Sydney, despite our paternal lineages. Like my dad comes from super strong people. My grandfather's people, the Gumbaynggirr North Coast people, are really strong, but them old girls from Mount Lapa and, our matriarchal line, it's always sort of been embedded in us it's very important to continue to be born here on country.
Yeah.
And me and my sister just had a really beautiful moment just reflecting on that and just reflecting on the resilience of that and what comes with that, and because I'm of that age now in some of my work where I'm asked by community to perform things like welcomes and stuff and explaining what welcomes are and why welcomes are important and why we do them, or why my community believes that we should conduct them and the importance of continuing them. And then it takes you on this whole journey or reflective journey of like where you come from and how your identity predates this concept of Australia and
100%.
what does that mean. And then the fact that it comes from my matriarchal lineage.
Totally.
I just found it really, really, I felt really empowered and really strengthened by that, because like I said, me and my sister were having a yarn, but then also having to sit there and explain kinship and our connection to our babies. So.
And you just come from a welcome over at Gadigal, I think you were saying.
Yeah, for Gadigal. So this particular one was for the Cancer Council this morning. Love them mob, they do great work, and I just always, it's great that we still, despite the current political climate, the disgusting things that we've seen on Anzac, and that we've got, big organisations that are still supporting us to
Yeah.
continue our culture
Yeah.
on country.
Totally.
And just that acknowledgement that it is the culture of this country.
Definitely.
Has been for thousands of years.
Definitely.
It's not
There's
a real issue.
There's all some great stuff over there. My son went to preschool over there at Kajaga, at the preschool there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing a stack of good stuff. You talk about your sister and you having that yarn about why it was so important for you both to be born on this country here.
Yeah.
Can you dive a bit deeper around what that means for you?
Yeah,
Why that is?
definitely. Because as I'm older, like we just sort of took it for granted, you know. We just sort of thought all little Koori kids sort of grew up out in country, and like I said, just sort of having the sort of childlike awe of understanding that. But then as you get older and you realise, you start to take on some of the cultural responsibilities that come with that,
Yeah.
being connected to country.
Mm.
One of our clan groups, so a layer of identity and a layer of our language. Spoke about Gadigal, and they're doing amazing work with language reclamation and maintaining our language, and that's the language that our old people continued to speak. I think there's a lot of conversations around that, but the language that our old people that we honour and that was spoken, you know, has been maintained out there, and Gajaga's doing great things to continue that language. But a layer of our identity is about so we refer to the ocean as Garu, and obviously, you know, we all love our fish and we're proud saltwater people. Then, so the translation is, you know, we're Garangal people, and that means we belong to the saltwater country of coastal Sydney, to the Illawarra.
Yeah.
And like what the entirety of that means. And then if you sort of zone in a little bit more onto that, my sister and I come from the Gadigal clan. And, you know, we've just, again, the La Perouse community and the legacy work that's going on out there that our old people started off generations ago in repatriating. So we just were successful in repatriating the, you know, Gadigal spears.
That's right.
Members of our clan went over and got those, you know, and
that was huge.
A huge moment for us, you know. There's a lot of talk about, you know, land rights, what it means to fight for our land. And for me, you know, I always remind a lot of people that may not be from this country, and when we're talking about land rights or what that means, for me, that was the first act of land rights.
Yeah, yeah.
And to know that I directly descend from that.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
pretty massive. And to think, and then realising that there's reasons of why our old people instilled certain things of like the importance of us being born here and continuing to be born here, because we're all aware of some really harmful rhetorics that got around about our people that we all wiped out.
Absolutely.
When we didn't exist.
Absolutely.
And we did. And, you know, to know that you carry that, and yeah, super, super powerful.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, obviously pretty clear that like those intentions from you know, your parents around where you were raised and reared up, and the flow-on effect that's had in terms of the impact you're continuing to have now through your heritage work and everything else that's happening. Has it? I'm imagining, like, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like that placing on this country and that journey, has that set the tone for where you are now, what you're doing?
Always. I love our elders, and you know, we just lost a senior woman, one of our senior women from Mount Lapa, you know, beautiful Auntie Marilyn Russell Timbry, who was the daughter of Auntie Esme Timbry.
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
like some of our really, really strong elders, and just realizing how strategic in hindsight now that we're parenting.
Absolutely.
And that we're transitioning into that, like, you know, birthing, and just really seeing the ways that we parent, or the ways that we convey cultural lessons and learning to the next generation, and just having those full circle moments, or those little black joy giggles of like, you know, I always tell this story about my Auntie Beryl. So she was my nan's older sister, that's Auntie Beryl Bella. You know, she was an amazing old woman, you know. Her and a lot of other senior women out of La Perouse started off all of the sort of family research and a lot of our services that they still see today.
Yeah.
Along with yeah, like I said, other senior women from the Williams families, like you say, the Ingrays and all that still out there. So we all come from those legacy families.
Yeah.
And we're also continuing a lot of the work, a lot of the Lapa families. But yeah, she was just really strategic in when we'd sit around and have family gatherings out on her country, talking about our genealogy, talking about our connections, talking about everything. But they were also very strategic in ensuring that our generation. So my mum went on to be, so our grandparents' generation didn't get the best education.
Yeah.
But then they ensured that they encouraged their children. So my mum and that generation, there was a big influx at Sydney University that went through and got teaching degrees. So they all went into education.
Yeah, wow.
And the role that, I guess, my mum's generation, my father's generation, my father was a hard worker, sort of worked in Aboriginal land rights and stuff like that, cultural heritage, and then them guiding us to take those next steps and then really, really, encouraging us to get into caring for country, education.
Yeah.
So all of those foundational sort of things that each generation or each legacy, each sort of step or contribution to legacy, and then growing up in the fullness of that, in the fullness of our Black resilience and our Black power and our Black strength and our Black joy, you just naturally, I guess, I just felt it was a very natural transition to be passionate, to go out on country.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, it's our turn now. You come 18, you think you're an adult now, you're ambitious, you've got a level of education. Again, my mum and dad contributed to, they spent a lot of years working at Cleveland Street High School.
Yeah.
The curriculum there was exceptional. We had, amazing elders come in. We had access to the Auntie Isabel Coes, Uncle Chicka Dixons, Uncle Lowell. So we wake up, we grew up very aware of our socio-political, understanding our cultural identity, but understanding the socio-political climate of what we're growing up in, our environment and the two tiers of our environment, like our cultural responsibility, but also our political responsibility and our political responses and our consciousness. So grew up in the full extent of that, and it was just like a natural transition to be passionate, but also the love that you get from the old people where they'll take the time to sort of guide you to see what you're comfortable in or what you're good at.
Yeah.
And it's just that slow, gentle push, and I had that from my Auntie Beryl Bella. My nan's other big sister was Auntie Rita.
Yeah.
Timbri, or Bennett Timbri. She really encouraged, and there was a big group of us, like when my dad worked at Metro Land Council, there was a big influx of Aboriginal people going into cultural heritage.
Yeah, okay.
And in order to do that in a culturally respectful way, obviously through the Land Rights Act, and, to respond to the demand of cultural heritage in a respectful way, my father being a Gamilaroi Murawari, Dungati Yuan man, but having that marrying into coastal Sydney people, he worked collaboratively, obviously, with the La Perouse community and was guided by his in-laws.
Yeah.
Matriarchal society, so the old
kept him
aunties,
in check,
kept him in check, which was quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And but also then you had, people like his brother, Uncle Brad, who had worked for years in Aboriginal cultural heritage within national parks and stuff, and then of course Uncle David Ingray as a senior man. So we were all like, I think 19, 20 sort of come through that. There was about 20 of us, I think, and that was a combination of kids from Redfern, and kids, that are connected to coastal Sydney, Dharawal people that identify as Dharawal people. And it was amazing. It was like a 12-year traineeship. We all obtained, I think it was like a certificate for in land conservation and management.
Yeah, wow.
And we'll just back out there and looking after our sites and we were really encouraged by. I know that I felt super encouraged by, my Uncle Brad, the old girls, but also like Uncle David Ingray. And we were sort of chucked in the deep end. We had to do some really confronting stuff like repatriation, which was relatively new to our communities, and it's repatriation of skeletal remains and stuff like that. So you're sort of chucked in the deep end, but we had this beautiful guidance from our senior people, and we're really, really lucky.
How old were you? Would have been back then?
19, about 19.
19. Wow.
And you just sort of get chucked into
massive.
it, and because you sort of hear about it a little bit. Like I said, the curriculum that we had at Cleveland Street High School, we did get a lot of Black history, so we sort of were aware, or just the oral history that was passed down in families. We were aware
Totally.
of the grave looting and our skeletal remains are being ripped up and impacts to country. So we sort of, at that generation, we come out really energized about the role that we could play or what we could now do to contribute to the legacy, to advocate for getting our cultural objects back, for looking after our country, understanding that the impacts of the built environment on our country, the impacts of industry on our country, understanding.
Can I ask you a question about when you're doing that heritage work and whether it's with remains or whether it's with like odd artifacts and that. When I was working in a language space, I found that work, although it was just language, like words, like it had a deeper impact on me
Yeah.
when I would read those words, or I would be looking at archives.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that at the time when I was younger, the power that had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, how do you deal with, as a black fella doing heritage work, when you're coming across stuff like remains and artifacts that hold a deeper impact on you than it would a non-Aboriginal person working in heritage? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's why I sort of wanted to talk about the support network that was wrapped around us
Yeah, okay.
when we done that process.
Yeah.
Because we knew that the way, I guess, cultural heritage regime, if we're talking about it from a discipline or Eurocentric perspective,
Yeah.
is quite different to how we view culture. So I think the way that it was developed was quite clever. And like I said, it was really important that we had those senior people, because
Yeah.
obviously we had to have the cultural teachings of how to digress, or because you are triggered by
Totally.
it. It's
Yeah.
very confronting. It's very upsetting to know that you have to respond to an ancestor potentially being impacted, and
Definitely.
the only legislative power that you have is to remove the ancestor and then repatriate it.
Yeah.
And we know with a lot of our ancestors, especially here around coastal Sydney and stuff like that, that they were buried with the full extent of our law. You know, pre the colony, and then here we are generations later making decisions about how do we rebury them, and we can't. There's no legislative power to leave them in situ. So you're really pressed with these hard decisions, and it requires. That's where the elements of our cultural processes come in to be, and the cultural knowledge and the cultural lessons, and having the support of our senior people to sit with us. And teach us to sit with our responses, or to sit with how that upsets us or how that makes us feel, and then guiding us strategically to come up with responses, or encouraging us to be free thinkers and believe in self-determination, believe in our cultural autonomy. And yeah.
How does that look for you now? So now, like, thinking back to like the start of that journey and how you navigated that.
Oh, I've changed so much. It's age, you know, I've had a love-hate, I'd say. I've been in the space for over 20 years. There's periods of time where I've had to take a big break from heritage, or there was times where I'd respond in a really angry way. I really advocated really hard. Like, I understood that we needed to repatriate.
Yeah.
But I'm still advocating for that right now, is that, like, why can't we leave things in situ, or looking at methodologies within the disciplines of cultural heritage that look at risk mitigation and align more with our cultural beliefs. So like I said, leaving our remains in situ. Why do our burials not have the same protection or legislative protection as a heritage cemetery, or, you know?
Definitely.
And we're still fighting that fight. We're still there, you know. We've done a lot of reform around the bill, worked in the space, but even just looking at archaeological methodologies of when we are doing excavations, trying to look at like less invasive ways to do excavation. So it's an ongoing struggle. I know that, you know, like my old people, I think you get a bit older, and when you're young, you're really ambitious. I wanted to change the world. I remember, you know, my dad and my parents and my elders did raise me to be a free thinker and a very strong black woman. So I did have my opinions, and I was never one to hold back on sharing my opinions.
Shy away from
Sometimes
it,
if I didn't agree, and I'd be like, why are we not fighting harder? But I know that I've chilled out a lot more now, and I've realised, you know, you've just sort of got to surrender, I guess, and trust in our cultural processes, and trust that you play a role.
Yeah.
They played their role. They taught me what they needed to teach me. You know, and I've lost my dad. I've lost a lot of my elders that I just reflected on, and that's a part of life. You do that. It's a part of the culture. It's a part of culture. It's a part of life. But they taught us enough so that we're still here.
Yeah.
So how do we bring our young ones in? How do we make sure that we're bringing them into the space? We're teaching them sustainable ways of being in the space.
Definitely.
But also love that they come in with that fire.
Yeah.
And they might come in with a new way. They'll come in, they're always going to, that's that next wave of like revolutionary thinking or changing. But just knowing that for now, the best thing I can sort of do sometimes, I just have to pause and be like, the best thing I can do is hold space as a black woman, hold on to everything I've been taught, the cultural tools I've been given by the people before me, hold them, play my role, and then pass the tools on,
Absolutely.
And then just think what our young people, and I'm always inspired by our young people because I do, as you get into sort of higher levels of cultural heritage or advising on, projects and stuff, you can get disheartened and you can see a lot of damage that's been done. But just often I'll go back to my water. La Perouse is very special to us because, after, we were 100 years into the colony, we're still in our camps all around the harbour in the various coves and along the Georges River and all of that. But La Perouse obviously is our safe haven. And then I think one of those teachings that I got from, the old girls out there was always, if I was stressed out, because we grew up in Redfern predominantly, but if we were stressed out, you always go to our water. So I was a lot fitter back then, so I could jog out to Lapa quite easy, if I was stressed out and just sit out the water. Yeah, I'll give it a go, mate. It might take me a bit longer.
Not another knockout left in you there, bro.
Oh, if I can jog out to Lapa, I reckon I could do another knockout, eh? No, but just those, those subtle, maintaining those cultural ways, even though we're very much in an urban environment, and understanding the spiritual connection we have to our waters, and just sitting by the water's edge and, just sitting and pausing for a moment and just having the power to reflect, knowing that you're guided by your ancestors, but knowing that we'll forever have that next generation coming through, and that's what that's our cultural teaching. That's what we believe, Not going to, got to take the ego out of things.
Absolutely.
You do your part.
Absolutely.
Know that it's your part. Know that you were raised to do your part. Know that everyone has their role. And, but just, so I love, like I said, looking at the water, the power of the ocean, those teachings about ebbs and flows. You can see them quite, you can see it in the water. You can see the way the water moves. Knowing we got the strength of the ocean because we're ocean people. But then I love looking at my little ones and looking at our young ones. Yeah. They inspire me. Yeah. And just my people inspire me.
That's it.
So if I can't get to the water, we've all got the gadgets in our hand. We love a scroll and then just seeing other black fellas, even if it's other black fellas from other country, and just looking at what they're doing and sharing knowledge and just being inspired. My people inspire me. My people inspire me. My land inspires me.
Totally. So. You made a comment about the young ones coming through, and they come through with fresh ideas or different ways to see things and all that sort of stuff. It actually made me think of, because I've said sis looked like Barker before we come on, but when you said that, it actually reminded me of something she said when I was yarning to her about culture, and she was talking about a lot of people see culture as something like prehistoric, as in the past, and it's like frozen. She was like, and she's not someone who works in cultural heritage, but she's a very strong black woman too, and she's like, culture adapts and shapes and moves, and there's a reason why it's the oldest living culture in the world, because it never was stuck. And it was it's interesting because when you talk about young people coming through and all that sort of stuff, what do you think about that sort of stuff from a cultural perspective? When because you work in that space of heritage, right? When people hear the word heritage, like you said, there's a Western sort of concept of what heritage is, and then there's a cultural piece too. But how do you talk to that in terms of?
Oh, always, and completely agree with Barker's teachings, and I love conversations with her mum too. I was really sort of privileged to sort of have Cleone around in the Redfern community. She's super intelligent. I love her her views and stuff. So it's really confronting because we're constantly confronted with that. There's this romanticized notion that culture is frozen in time, and there's these narratives that were used to dehumanize us as Aboriginal people, that the Aboriginals that we are now is not the real Aborigines, and all of those harmful rhetorics that were used as colonial tools against us. So we know for a fact, and even within my archaeology and the work that I do, we know that our culture evolves. Our language evolved. I think one of the biggest examples that we use is like the word that we use for Wallang. Walang is our word for money, but it derives from, they were referring to like wine. Like I think it's wine. My Dharawal's not too good. So sorry to my Dharawal mob if I muck it up. But, as a reference to the head being on the coin.
Yeah.
So then it translated into Walang. And then you go, there's all these various excavations around Sydney. And you see that we started to experiment with different materials that the Europeans were bringing. Another example that I use of it, and it's something that's very close to my family's cultural resilience, is our shell work.
Yep.
So you see the traditional ways that women use shell is that we would make the fish hooks and would fish. But as we were exposed to sort of jewelry and adornment from European people, you see our shell work start to transition into, so you see the beautiful work that the old Timbri and the old, Dharawal women were still doing. And I always reflect on this lesson because we're saltwater people. And yes, we weren't still making the fish hooks, but we were still walking with our grannies or walking with the women on our beaches, collecting those shells. But in collecting those shells, you're learning identification.
Totally.
You're understanding what's edible, what's not edible.
Yeah.
So it's just we've got really clever ways that we had to adapt our culture because we know that it was also, once we were on missions, a lot of missions, it was forbidden to share culture. Our Nana, for me, my Sydney language, I'm not too strong in my Sydney language, but my Nana's older sister and her children and grandchildren, they've sort of played that role for our family. They're really into the revitalisation of language, but they talk about, all the women, the old girls will sit at the back at Lapa when they'd all be doing their washing together or whatever, and that's where they'd be going for it in the lingo, the old girls, and they'd talk to the kids and that, but when they also knew they'd just say it in front of the white fellas. Because it was outlawed. So there was that whole, I guess, duplicity of our, or the ways that we responded, but understanding and never losing sight of us as Aboriginal people practicing our culture on country.
Totally.
So it's like that responsibility, but understanding that it evolves and it changes and what, we maintain, there are breaks in culture and us as coastal Sydney Aboriginal people, we admit that. You look at the big sort of, the quarrying of our lands and dredging of our water, and then you even have a look at acts that we are now working within, like conservation acts and stuff like that. But because it was under a Eurocentric regime of heritage, it actually locked us out. It stopped us from going and regrooving. It stopped us from being able to engrave. It stopped us to be able, so then things transitioned, we started doing our engravings on different materials or whatever like that.
Totally.
So but just understanding that that's our resistance, it's still our culture, it's still, we still have to honour our old people, but, it's always over to that next generation to see what they come up with or how they want to express culture and, urban setting, especially as urban Aboriginal people. But any ways that we can maintain them old ways of thinking and being.
100%.
I'm open, I'm all for it. And I think that whole Eurocentric conservation metric, it's not ours. And the more we detach from it, the more autonomy and self-determination we're going to have over our cultural identity and what we view as culture and empowerment.
Totally.
So I love seeing young fellas come through and love seeing the rap scene, the art scenes, whatever, whatever.
Totally.
Our different ways of storytelling being, but retaining culture. I think it's really clever.
How do you reckon we deal with contention then with, we talk about new generations coming through, and that's part of like culture continuing to grow and reflect and that sort of stuff too. But we also sort of can see contention with that stuff too sometimes, right? Whether it's for example, whether it's language boundaries, whether it's different things like that. How do you, and without getting into specific, contention and stuff, that's not like we don't need to yarn about that stuff, but how do you sort of see us navigating that stuff culturally as black fellas?
I see it. I think I could sort of just give an example, I guess. So I work a lot with cultural heritage. There's now the sort of connect with country framework. And I've heard a lot, there's a lot of people that will talk, they start talking about our songlines or our stories and stuff like that. And like I said, I was very, very blessed to grow up in a family that, even though we were impacted by, we were the first people impacted by colonisation, we still retained a lot of our cultural information and stayed on our country and knew our stories of our land and know where a lot of our significant sites are. retained language, retained our stories. And I see in this space now where the people are talking about songlines and new songlines and all that, and that takes me back a bit. Because in saying that, I encourage young people to think of new ways to retain language. I do think we have a cultural responsibility when we're talking about our old stories to tell them verbatim.
Yep.
You can't reinvent. My nan always said, don't ever reinvent.
Totally.
If you don't know something, acknowledge that. Acknowledge that there might be a gap in that story for your family, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. You should never feel forced to make something up about culture.
Definitely.
Because I think what we're really trying to do as cultural heritage practitioners, or this is what I see my role as, is protecting those really sacred cultural places.
Yeah.
So if you're not telling that verbatim or honouring those particular places, you run a risk of why are we even there then?
Yeah, definitely.
Our job's to be the caretaker or custodian, whatever language people want to use of that. That's our responsibility. Definitely. So yes, go, free with it. There's different genres of music, different ways that we tell story.
Yeah.
I'm loving, we're talking about music. We reference Barker, you've referenced, Emma Donovan.
Yeah.
The way that she's just singing in Gumbaynggirr language right now, I'm loving that, and it's, it's in different, it's not it's not what we would see as traditional music, but I just think we do have a responsibility when we're talking about country to really talk about verbatim. I think another example that I was taught as saltwater people is, say if you're telling a story about, for example, pippies at a place where there wasn't pippies.
Yeah.
You're going to muck your next generation up. You got a responsibility. You show them where you were taught to fish or give pippies, where your old people taught you, and that's so that they can be sustainable on country.
Yeah.
There's this whole level of sustainability and responsibility that comes with sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we've always got to balance that, and we've always got to remember that.
Definitely.
I'm not into making it up.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, verbatim. It's got to be verbatim. You can't muck around. You can't pretend about stories. You can't say, tell a pippy story where there wasn't pippies. Your kid's going to go there looking for pippies and not know what bimblers are.
Yeah.
They're going to miss the lesson.
Yeah,
They're
totally.
going to miss what's there, the truth about country.
100%.
And about how our people interacted with it for thousands of years. If you're lucky enough to have that information, it's your cultural responsibility to retell that verbatim.
How do you reckon, like, being a heritage consultant, and I'm a consultant too in policy, how do you see how do we navigate the risk of what you're talking about not happening, so stuff doesn't get mucked up or new things don't get created? Because I think we yarned a little bit about, like, government or agencies can just like pluck a consultant out, and that one person's or organization's advice becomes the truth, for that agency, and that'll inform how to make decisions about heritage or policy or whatever. Have you seen that sort of stuff in your field, or like, do you think there's risk of?
It happens in Sydney a lot. There was we had the federation of this country forced on our people.
Yeah.
That was never our cultural identity. We were all, over 200 sovereign nations of Aboriginal people. That whole pan, social movement that was inspired, bits of, Marcus Garvey, the Black Panther Party, all that sort of social revolutionary stuff. I get that. And there definitely should be a unity amongst Aboriginal people. And, that was our response to federation. It was a required response. It was a united survival. I do believe it's cultural. It is a culture. There's a tier of a cultural response to that as well. But I do get concerned if we're going to move away from our protocols and understanding that people of country. I've never lived off country. I understand how people can have different opinions, and I understand why my opinions are so strong. Like, obviously I shared with you our stories of resistance and why it's so important for us to be here and continue to be here as, Gadigal people, as Dharawal people. I get it, but I do have massive concerns if we're not gonna be respectful to the people of the land,
Yeah.
because I really believe that's adopting European colonial sentiments or rhetorics, and we're starting to use it against our own people. I think that's a little bit concerning. I think if we look at our cultural ways, there's always going to be a responsibility to look after each other, have a level of unity. But I think if you're on country, it's always you give that respect of country to the people of that country. I've never not lived on my country.
Yeah.
And there's no way in the world, for example, I had this yarn the other day, there's nowhere in the world like, one of our stories that stayed real strong with our people is the Buru story. You see the whale engraved all up and down our coastline. You see the migration. We're in migration period right now. Big season for us, Would it be okay for me to take the Buru story and impose it on somewhere like Uluru?
Yeah.
Mate, that would even saying that out loud makes me feel uncomfortable. It's so disrespectful.
I didn't even want to say nothing.
Yeah, I don't even want to say it. Like I don't even
100%.
it icks me just saying that.
Totally.
But that's an analogy that we've got to think about. I
Definitely.
understand it's an urban city. I understand it's hard to see country. I understand it's hard to be reminded of that, and we've got all the responsibilities, our social responsibilities as Aboriginal people, all of that stuff, that we deal with our social justice and all that. But I just don't think I have really grave concerns if we really shift from our cultural identity, because we sit here and we introduce ourselves. And when we introduce ourselves, what is the most important ways of us introducing ourselves? You say where you're ancestrally from.
Right.
And what is the trajectory? I have grave concerns for the trajectory of our future generations if we're going to sway from that. I don't care if you've been, like even for my Gumbaynggirr family, my Gumbaynggirr family, we've been here in Sydney for generations.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're not going to be.
Totally.
And that for our future generations, they should always acknowledge that they're Gumbaynggirr or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose your ancestral connection. That's what makes us.
Totally.
So it's just balancing that and just being clever about it, but also understanding that there was these forced policies. I grew up in the Redfern community. I grew up in our self-determination. I marched when I was 4 years of age, 88, for land rights.
Totally.
I love it. I live it. And I believe, in our social justice and stuff like that. But never, ever, ever forget where you come from.
Yeah, definitely.
And lose our identity. And I know there's gaps. I know there's families that have gaps, but I think something really beautiful I seen growing up down Redfern and having access to my Lapa community is you can come back in a really respectful way to our community, and our old people will remember you.
Totally.
Or they'll remember your family.
Yeah.
It's just
definitely
coming back.
Totally.
Because we all know a lot of our families, like I'm a Welsh and a Jarret. We were heavily impacted.
Yeah.
By stolen generation.
Totally.
But our old people, they were clever, they were strategic, believe in our cultural systems, have faith that it's there. And, just do your due diligence, finding out who we are. And the more you find out about family, share it.
Yeah.
Share that knowledge. And I love yarning with blackfellas. I know, like I'm actually pretty shy, but when I see my mob, I love having that yarn,
Yeah.
I love having that yarn.
Totally.
Where you from? Who's your mob? Making those connections is beautiful.
Totally. Can I ask you a question about, you talk about you got, 4 Aboriginal grandparents, got a strong connection to all these different countries and nations. And do you do heritage work across countries and nations, or do you only work on the countries that you're connected to? Because that's a big question.
That's my own thing.
Yeah.
This is my own, and I don't, like I said, I can only be Rowena Welsh Jarrett. But for me, I only work on my country. If I'm invited for my technical expertise, quote unquote, I even hate that word expertise. It's very foreign to us. But you say because, I've got excavation experience or I've got survey experience.
Yeah.
If a mob outside of my cultural area or cultural groups invite me to support them with my technical capabilities, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't believe I should ever do cultural work on someone else's country.
Yeah.
I do cultural work on my country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm on the same school of thought as you, you know. Even like, you know, we do, our work is policy work, right? And it's, you know, predominantly it's in Aboriginal affairs because we're black fellas and they think we can only do work, research work or policy work in that space. But people would ask us for a long time to do like stuff, not cultural awareness, but stuff around cultural capability, different stuff like that. And my response was always like, the people that are delivering that training need to be from the country that work's happening on. So if they're working, if their office is in Coffs Harbour, they need to be speaking to Gumbaynggirr people to do that work. And I think it's the same principles.
Happy to support the conversation, to support the dialogue, but ultimately, you know, we want to believe and we want to continue with that whole self-determination.
Yeah.
Because that's always been our people's empowerment, self-determination. So it's like, yeah, all right, fair enough. You might have a relationship with them. Happy to support you fostering that relationship, but it should never be in the thing of that you're going to be there long term.
Yeah.
It should be a genuine succession plan or a restoration of custodianship
Totally.
to the people of country.
Totally.
And I see a lot of, like, you know, we've got a lot of amazing allies, you know, shameless plug. Everyone knows I'm a massive fan of him. He supports me in my heritage work and Paul Irish practitioners like that. There's a lot of heritage practitioners, a lot of heritage work here in Sydney. Obviously, you know, there's always buildings and there's always requirements for cultural heritage surveys to be conducted. But, you know, there are people within those different industries that have genuinely want to support Aboriginal people to be empowered in those spaces. And, you know, if non-Indigenous people can do that, we as blackfellas should definitely be doing that.
What does that look like? Because we get a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are non-Aboriginal professionals working in these sorts of spaces. What are your advices to them that are listening to this when you talk about that? When you said like there's people like Paul Irish and there's others that are allies and doing good work alongside us, what advice would you give to people that might be in the heritage space or connected to it?
So my biggest thing is, like I said, the epistemologies of the various disciplines that are within the heritage space. You know, like it started out as natural history, anthropology, archaeology, all of those different disciplines. They're all tiered at othering. Shape that back a bit. And I've recently just done a postgrad unit around the professional practice of cultural heritage and what that regime actually looks like and the rigor. And so you even look at academic writing and then the responsibility to reference and to reference your sources appropriately and everything like that. That rigor or that, you know, doing that, applying those metrics or those standards were never applied to Aboriginal research or Aboriginal history. So if you're a practitioner in that space, understand that, yes, you do have your role. You know, you've gone to university. Anyone that, you know, takes the time out to dedicate their life to a discipline, great. But understand your role and how does your role support Aboriginal self-determination? Because ultimately that's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no difference between you and old man Charles Darwin.
Totally.
Othering.
100%.
There's been no evolution on your behalf.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
That's it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that's where I'm at with it. I just think it all should be very much around succession planning, supporting, you know. And even for other blackfellas, you know, I don't want to tell any heritage project that I do. I'm very big on figuring out who them old people were. So if I find something archival, if I know descendants, there's nothing that gives me more joy than taking that story to them people and being like, oh, yeah, sis, look here, they just found a print of your old grandfather or something, you know. What do you want to do with that?
Yeah.
How do you want to retell that story? That's our cultural responsibility. But then I was also very pleased to see that it's actually a requirement within heritage.
What's that like when you do that?
Oh, I love it. It's so empowering. I love having those conversations. I'm very much, I don't know, I'm like an old girl. I just love talking about our connection. I think that's where our resilience is. A bit exhausted from expecting us to be resilient. So I was a bit apprehensive to say that word. But, you know, you just see how we survived.
Yeah.
And it just connects us to that. And I often feel empowered by that. And I see young fellas' faces light up when they sit there and get told about their old grandfather. And then, you know, you give it to them and then they'll go and have a yarn with senior people. It sort of activates these amazing conversations.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it empowers them. And also it's bringing another truth, because we're all big on truth telling.
That's right.
We understand that we've been, not we, I guess, this country, as a part of this country, have inherited a curated history.
Yeah.
Curated history that was very much around the federation of this country, and then our participation in our First World War.
Yeah.
And really imbalanced history that was taught in curriculums. Non-Indigenous people are starting to talk up about it a lot. It was a topic at the history symposium, that there's a curated history.
Yeah.
I personally will go out on a limb and say I believe it is one of the biggest contributing factors to the social cohesion issues that we're having in this country.
Yeah.
The racism that we're enduring.
The curated history.
The lies.
Yeah.
And the lack of acknowledgement of as First Nation people, because I believe if you elevate our stories, everyone gets elevated.
Absolutely.
But the waves of migration.
Definitely.
The contributions, like the real story of what this country is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I sort of love doing a history. I obviously love doing our history, but I also love the multicultural history, and just anyone, if you feel connected, a level of connection to something, we want to leave a better environment.
Definitely.
For our kids. I don't want my kids or my grandkids having the conversations that I'm having around racism or the harm that's been done to me.
Totally.
Because of racism.
Totally.
Occurring to our babies. And, I love when I say, like I said, a lot of hope that I get, a lot of work that I do. So when I'm not doing these sort of big cultural heritage jobs, I really take the opportunity to go into schools or sit with young people or take young people around the country, because they just give you hope. Yeah. And you see like little non-Indigenous kids, they're so keen to learn.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just think, we get them at that young age, we expose them to them, they're having them yarns. They're having them yarns.
100%.
And
that's where the opportunity is, eh?
Yeah, the legacy.
Yeah.
The legacy. And then you see, like, even with our environmental management, I love our cultural knowledge. And our cultural knowledge is the knowledge of this country. It has a place. And we haven't always had a voice, or we haven't been able to participate in our country. But there are things that have come from colonization that our cultural knowledge might not be able to restore.
Yep.
So you see great examples of like Western science collaborating, or using Western science or other forms of science, even, Eastern science, other forms of science, but using our cultural knowledge and, collaborating.
Yep.
But I'm very big on co-authoring, collaborating. Always respect people of the land.
Absolutely.
And that's where you go. And totally. I reckon that's where the answers are.
Yeah.
I think, for everywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good example, right? Like, it's that whole idea of like, comes back to what we talked about like our culture isn't something that's prehistoric or frozen in time. Like it's something that, it has continued to adapt and grow and
a lot of it was based on observation too.
Yeah.
You're out on country, you're observing, right? So we work a lot, like we're coastal people, so we're working a lot with marine science people and stuff. I'm very blessed. I have been given the honour of being on the Female Gemma Rangers Advisory.
Mate.
One of my, I'm so happy about that I can contribute to that process. But that's working a lot with amazing scientists who are out on the sea.
Yeah.
Who are out observing. Because we were in thousands, like our population has, dwindled.
Yeah.
We live in a urban life. We've got urban responsibility. So we're not out on country as much. We're not observing.
Absolutely.
So we need allies.
Totally.
If they're out there, they've got that passion. Totally. There's already some level of alignment there, right?
Yeah.
That these guys are passionate, about something.
Yeah.
You might have to have some hard conversations sometimes and get them to a place where they're understanding.
Yep.
Our cultural
Understand
lens.
their place in it
yeah,
as well.
and understanding that it's the culture of this land. And we'll continue to sing that song. And we'll continue to be those people.
Yeah.
No matter what happens.
Totally.
But yeah, just working together and, having those brilliant people that want to support us to care for country. And then I've seen it happen so many times. I've met some really out there people that sort of couldn't see the value of Aboriginal people participating in science or participating in conservation, and they're like, especially archaeologists. Sorry to the discipline, but I just used to meet some young males on our digs and just had some really horrible, and you're like, bud, you've done one unit on stone tools.
Yeah.
We're over here on the beach. potentially not going to find a lot of stone tools.
Yeah.
Like they don't even know what they're looking for. You've done,
Totally.
30 units on Egyptology.
Totally.
Pretty sure we're not looking for a pyramid. But they just come with this arrogance.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it,
Yeah.
if they're open to the dialogue or,
Yeah.
if they're actually even just open to honouring the discipline that they studied or their role in what they're doing there,
Yeah.
you see them like slowly soften and slowly realise that, these senior people here that know what a fish hook was made out of
Yeah.
might bring some value.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or,
Absolutely.
or the people that know the land, or they know because their grandfathers for thousands of years or their grandmothers for thousands of years fished here.
Yeah.
So we might know that just because your map says the creek's over there, our cultural data says that's a lie.
Yeah.
No, just things like that.
Totally.
But also just being able to do it in a really respectful way, and you just see the shifts, and that's all we can hope is just leave a better future for everyone. And ultimately, the biggest story is when you're out on country, because I was very blessed. Went out, on Gamilaroi country, Gomeroi, Mudawari country, was taught by old people from Dungati, Lapa, South Coast. So I was very, very blessed. And when you go out on country, you just realise ultimately our stories and our ways of being are about sustainability. Because it's our responsibility to teach the next generation, because we want to continue.
Yeah.
And we haven't been here for thousands of years if we didn't have these
Absolutely.
these amazing our law, our standards, our cultural ways of being and doing. So,
Totally. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? You probably don't even remember because it come up as we were yarning, but like years ago, Red Rock, Gumbaynggirr country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm from there.
Yeah. And I was with Kalisha Morris, your cousin, I think maybe, or we would connect at least somewhere.
through the Morris side web mob,
And
her nan, who I call Big Nan, was one of the most amazing Gumbaynggirr women. Set up one of the founders of Murabai.
Yeah, okay.
We refer to her as Big Nan.
Yeah, wow. She so I was working with her at the time around access to country. And so there was the family gathering at Red Rock. You went there, right? Because I ended up not going because I was sick. I was supposed to be there.
Yeah, so we've always gone there. So we've really tried to maintain our connection to there. And I know there's families that haven't left and have stayed there. And, big love and respect to all the families up there that have stayed there on country. Very, very special place to us. There's our fish trap and everything's there. It's one of those places with the dual heritage. So the community, for as long as I can remember, have always tried to utilise the heritage regime, and different legislative measures to protect it.
Yeah.
It's tiered like a lot of heritage places. There's Taylor's Camp, that's one of the families that I come from.
Yeah.
It's up there. But there's also our fish traps there. And we're trying to argue, but because they were recorded and they were put into that whole conservation regime, we then had to fight for cultural use of them.
Yeah.
So there was like this whole generation where we were sort of at a loss of understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's like a great example of that. But yeah, I'm not sure how they're going with that. I know a lot of the mob are up there still trying to, still fighting a good fight on that. But
I think the big thing about why I wanted to, why I brought it up, why it come up whilst we was talking was about how important access to country is.
Oh, it's everything.
Because I know working with Kalisha at the time there, like she was at DeFi there, and so like part of that was DeFi was supporting access to country to be able to do that work, to bring families together so that we could do what we were doing there.
The awkward truth of the situation, and that's why I do refer to it as the heritage or conservation regime. It's an imposed regime. The 74 Cultural Heritage Act allowed us to participate in that.
Yeah.
But that's how many generations of us being locked out.
Yeah.
And in the name of conservation and protection.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was one of the biggest, we just got to be frankie, biggest land grabs.
Yeah.
They locked us out. And then that's why it's really important that we continue to be diligent and try to obtain access through the legislative mechanisms, but also just continue to go back on country.
Yeah.
You know, there's different ways that we can try and access it for Aboriginal land rights. Also native title.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's funny, because
it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Like, you've got to go. And then that was the thing too, like really early on in the piece when we all sort of, our generation went through, because there was that big influx of us trying to get back onto country. Because you got to remember, there was that generation before us, for some families, 2 generation, where the old fellas went out recording all the sites.
Yeah.
You know, some of the senior men went out recording all of our sites. And, you know, then there was that big push to get Aboriginal people in, but then we were sucked into the vacuum of our national parks roles and all that. And then, you know, yes, they're great. No, we don't want them taken away. We don't want them reduced.
Yeah.
But we also just want cultural access.
Yeah. Yeah.
Off the premise of our self-determined and our cultural rights.
Totally.
And the biggest thing is access to country, access to resources. Biggest thing. It's the biggest loss to us.
Yeah.
Like, if we can't have access to our country and to our resources, it's why it is 101 why we are in the predicament that we are in as Aboriginal people.
Absolutely. If you had a message for like leaders that were listening, that work in that sort of space within those sorts of agencies, like, what would your advice be to them? What would your key messages be to them around supporting this stuff?
I've worked in those spaces. I've been on those advisories. I'm not into, you know, what's happened to us colonially is complex. We need the mob in there.
Yeah.
We need the mob in the spaces, in the identified jobs. We need the mob fighting the different various legal. We've got the Cultural Heritage Bill, we've got the Native Title regime, we've got the land rights regime. We need a mob in those spaces.
Totally.
But then we also need the younger ones or other people coming around thinking outside of the box.
Yeah.
What you know, what invasion and colonisation has done to our people is complex. It's not going to be there's not going to be one way to repair it, to restore it. It's not one fight. It's not in the streets marching in isolation. It's not in the government departments. It's not in the high courts in isolation. It's this, what would you say, like a collective of responses. I think that's how we've always been culturally anyway, right? Everyone had their different roles in that.
100%.
So I think if we sort of apply that ethos to even, you know, how we're doing business now, because I'm not a believer of like, you know, cursing the mob that are in there, turning up to that office, holding that space every day. It's hard.
It's very hard.
I've done it.
Very hard.
It's hard, and I don't want to run our people down. That's what I mean. It's complex. Colonisation is strategic. It was
over the
clever.
same conversation around DCJ the other day. We do a lot of stuff, child protection space, you know, and same conversation. You know, we need mob in there.
Yeah.
Pushing back.
We need all the spaces. We need the mob marching on the streets. We need a thing, but we need to just always get back to that black love, and that's what I mean. That black love, that black identity, our black ways of being, and our black joy, our black resilience. So yeah, like hats off to all the mob doing their bit. Yeah, and like I said, that's why I get inspired. Yeah, and that's what podcasts like this are good. You know, cheesy plug. Getting our good stories out there, because we're copping it in media. Yeah, 100%. So getting those good stories out and seeing that we are fighting. Yeah. We're fighting on every level. We haven't lost the fire. We haven't lost. Right. We're still warriors.
That's it. And that's holding space for people like yourself that are driving this stuff day in, day out. It's critical, you know, because like you said, like people showing up every day doing the hard yards and doing the work on the front line. And, you know, like you said, marching on the streets when you were 4 years old, like that work still continues today. It just looks different, you know, but it's just as powerful as ever.
Yeah. So now my fights sometimes, you know, spend a lot of my time in the state library. You know, the face of the space where you're fighting might have changed. Or, you know, doing research work, but it's still contributing to that fight.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Coming towards the time together, we've been online for about an hour, which is a good yarn. But I just wanted to see if like there was any sort of final thoughts or final things that you wanted to touch on, just based on what we've been yarning about, that you feel like you haven't had a chance to sort of speak to yet.
No, I think we touched on a lot of things. I think we've had a really robust yarn.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just, like I said, I'm always looking for other ways to continue to talk about real histories, truth telling. Like I said, I write a lot of reports that potentially sit on shelves. It'd be good to see some of our cultural truth, some of our cultural heritage and our narratives in the public domain a lot more, and thinking of clever ways to do that.
Yeah.
Whether it be responses to monuments, whether it be different ways of doing cultural heritage interpretation.
Definitely.
So I'm very much in that space now. I'm really passionate about that, but I'm also always love the need for black media.
Yeah.
Like I said, grew up down Redfern. We need it. You know,
That's it.
Radio Redfern. We need our voices out there. Can't leave it to the Carl Stefanovics and that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, shameless plug to Carl.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get you. We get something going, you know, and it would be mad to, like you said, like you writing reports that sit on the, you know, you're worried they're sitting on shelves or, you know, doing all this research. I just want ways
to see our young people engage with it. I think that's
definitely.
What makes me really uncomfortable. I've got this information, and the way that we're working now, we don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time to sit with my nieces or nephews or my babies and explain the knowledge that I'm putting into these reports.
Totally.
That are going into a regime that, yes, we do have to fight, but the people I want to be talking to are my babies. The people who I want to have this information are my people.
Totally.
So, yeah, very passionate about how we get that out there to our mob. And I know our babies, they've got, you know, there's this massive interest in digital media.
Totally.
And I love it. So I'm like, let's get on that.
That's it. And it's a new, you know, that's how we always shared our knowledge, right, was through storytelling and oral ways. And so digital media is another version of that today, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I often think about it all the time. We write reports about stuff, and I get wild that, like, the communities that we're writing about can't access what we're writing.
Oh, that's a whole nother layer. Sometimes the red tape. And the NDAs, you know, we had a little offline chat about that, the non-disclosure agreements, and you're doing this amazing work and you're talking about our people, and I'm like, how can we ensure this information? Free the information. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think, you know, that's going to be my legacy work. Free our creeks. Yeah. They sealed up all our creeks and our waterways here in Sydney. Free the creeks and free our cultural information and our, you know, our black liberation of our land, liberation of our people and our truth.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really powerful point to wrap up on, and I just want to thank you so much for making the time to come in, and hopefully it's the first yarn of many. Hopefully get you back in when you're ready to come back in for another one.
No, thank you for holding space, brother. I know it took a while to get us coordinated to have this chat. It's been about 18 months in the making.
No, that's it.
Definitely. No, thank you, brother. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Just stay black.
Hey, stay deadly.